Welcome to In Alignment. I'm Annie.
And I'm Marissa. You were meant to find this today, and we're so glad you're here.
Welcome back to In Alignment. This is our second episode, and we're going to chat a little bit today about our stories, Marissa and I's career path, leaving jobs that didn't serve us anymore, and essentially what led us to found Shift. Marissa, I'd love to kick it off by hearing your journey. You left, actually, just honestly explain your career path because you have had such an amazing career path and now you're doing something so different. But I feel like you knew this was in your path forever, but what led you here was kind of a unique journey.
My whole career path has been kind of a bizarre series of changes and coincidences and things that have kind of like worked out. And when I think back about the best moments in my career path, we were so unplanned and very like serendipitous, and the right things came at the right time. But I actually went to college thinking that I was going to be a lawyer. So I went to UGA. I was a political science major. And one of the reasons I went to UGA was that, I'm from Atlanta. It was free. And so I was like, I'm going to save money and go to law school and spend money on law school and not have to pay for undergrad. And so that was like such a set plan in my mind, even like up until pretty much my junior year. And around my junior year, my family had a really big financial downturn. We had to go through bankruptcy. We lost our house. And I started needing to like really work to make money. I was driving Uber. I was bartending. I was hostessing. I worked at a clothing store. And I also was doing some kind of like entrepreneurial stuff by going to random businesses and setting up their Facebook ads in Athens. Athens is where UGA is, to try to make as much money as I possibly could. And my mindset really shifted from what is my dream career to what could I do that would allow me to live independently and make money more quickly. Because law school, it's not just that you have to pay for law school and I would go into all this debt. It's also like delaying my earning potential for 3 years. And it's also, how am I going to even do law school and pay for everything? So I was like, I have to pivot. And I got really lucky because I ended up interning for a friend who's actually a friend of my cousin's, who then started a company, and I was helping him with it, interning for him at this new company. And he said, Marissa, I think you need to be a product manager in tech. And I had to Google what that was. I was like, what does a product manager do? Like, what does that look like? And I remember reading the description, and it's basically like, I am responsible for the entire user experience of a product. I get to figure out what we should build, how to build it, and launch it. And that was honestly really exciting to me because there was a lot of autonomy and control. It was even described as like the CEO of a product. And I was like, okay, this is fun. This is what I'm working on with him. I could see this being a career path, and tech became this kind of answer for me of a place that I could go do something that I like, leverage some of my skill sets, and make money, which was critical. And it's interesting too, because of all the career paths that have ever been presented to me, no one at the time had ever mentioned to me that tech was an option. I feel like the options on the table were like doctor, nurse, something in the medical field, maybe like as far as business went, like maybe marketing or finance, and then a path like law or consulting. Those were sort of the options that I saw on the table, and tech had never even been something I was aware of. So I was like, oh, this is really exciting. And so I ended up that ended up being my career path. Working for him opened the door to go work at Peloton for 4 years, which was probably like the highlight of my career. I absolutely loved it. It was the intersection of working in fitness on a product people loved, health, all of that was so much fun for me. And it made me realize like I like working in a startup environment. I like working on a product that makes people feel really good about themselves, that makes people feel healthier, better. We heard so many stories from people who were like, Peloton saved me through the death of a parent or through a divorce, or, then when the pandemic hit, it was like everything to so many people. And so that experience and just like the friends I made there, the skills I learned there were absolutely incredible. And it opened doors for me to work at a women's health company and then start a company with a group of Peloton people. So my whole career, like Peloton really shaped my career up until now. And over the last year or so, I think it really started when I was turning 30. I was starting to think of like, what do I want to do next? And I knew that I wanted to do something that involved starting my own company. And I knew I wanted to do something that was back in what I thought at the time, like the health space. I wanted to improve health aspects for women because I was going through my own health struggles. I was working so hard in my career. I was trying to keep up, constantly like moving to the next, like the next title, the next pay raise, the next apartment, just continuing kind of like to climb that ladder in New York. And I wanted to just keep moving up that ladder. And that was like making me, I think, really exhausted and kind of exacerbating a lot of my symptoms. And so I was like focused on that and also focused on healing myself and feeling better. And I started like journaling about what is it that I really love doing. And the things that kept coming up for me are I love working with people that I love, that are inspiring, that are on the same page, that we kind of get really excited when we're talking about things. So, like being around people, I love community. Like, community has been such an important element for me in healing, finding my people, finding communities that are like minded, that are safe, that are trusting, that are open. And I wanted to not only be part of community, but I also wanted to help build it because I found it really hard to find communities. When I did find them, they were amazing, but I found them hard to find. And then I loved talking about and sharing what I was learning. I loved being able to help people. I loved being able to learn from them in return. And what started as an interest in healthcare, as my journey went on with my health, and I found holistic healing, and then I found more emotional healing and deeper healing, and healing that was really, really hard, but the most effective, which is healing past traumas. That was when I was like, oh my gosh, I found the thing that I really love to do. And I think the really hard part is when you find something you love to do, but you have no idea how you would possibly make money doing it, when you have no idea how you would even go about starting that. Like, to me, starting a tech company was a very clear path. I knew the steps. I'm not saying it wouldn't be extremely hard, but it was clear. I knew what to do. I had been at a tech company since day one. I understand who the players are, who I would need to hire, how I would go about raising money. Like, that was a clear challenge with a clear path, but it wasn't the path that I felt like I wanted. And that was a really scary moment for me of like, oh God, I'm finding myself really wanting this other thing and I don't even know how to do it. And that is where I was when I met you. That's my
I
really long-winded story.
Did you always know you wanted to start your own business?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, but I didn't always have the confidence that I could. If you ask my mom, I have been starting companies since I was a child. I started a purse business where I turned jeans into purses. I started like any type of business I could get my hands on, went to craft fairs, went to sewing classes, starting like services businesses in my neighborhood. I loved to do that. And I would employ like my best friends and my sister. And that was like my idea of a fun time. And I think I lost that for a while with the lawyer path, but it was always in the back of my mind. I didn't have a lot of examples growing up of women who had started their own companies. My dad was an entrepreneur, so I had that, but there were no, strong, powerful women in his orbit. And when I got into the startup scene in New York and started to see people doing it, I thought, I really, really want that, but I didn't think I could. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I did a lot of inner work that imposter syndrome was able to temper a little bit. And my mindset shifted to, well, why not me? Like, why couldn't I do that? Like, you know, I realized doing something like that is more of a confidence question than a competence question.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
that really changed my life because forever I was like, I need to keep getting more and more experience. And then I was seeing people who just had the courage to take the risk. And I was like, why not me?
Right. Yeah, I feel like it's so much about having the faith in yourself and trusting yourself that you can create whatever path that you want for you.
You were one of my people. Like, when I first met you and I had heard a lot about you from our mutual friends, but I thought, seeing you just take steps without necessarily having, you were doing it by yourself. You didn't necessarily know exactly where it would take you, but you just started posting on Substack. You started this podcast. You started your business. And I was like, wow, like I love that she just does it, like just takes the action.
Similar to you, I mean, I knew I wanted to start a company since I was probably 8 years old. That is the first memory that I have of I remember being in the back of our car, driving home from our lake house at, like, literally 8 years old. It was pouring rain, and I was thinking about starting a makeup company and exactly how I was gonna market it, what the formulation was gonna be, the container I was gonna sell it in, how I would sell it, and it was lemonade stands, it was card businesses, it was playing, having like a shop at on my 3rd floor at my parents' house. It was our local festival in my hometown, having a pop-up stand and selling like the randomest stuff. Sometimes it was like things out of my mom's bathroom. But I feel like when you have that itch in your DNA, exactly as you said, it's more about confidence than competence. I think we all have confidence, obviously. And I also firmly believe that if it is a desire, it is in your path. Like all of the things that we want in life or yearn for or that make us feel lit up or creative make us feel that way for a reason. And I think sometimes it's, not the first job you're going to do or that thing isn't going to come to you immediately, but it is in your path and you just have to keep moving towards it through small aligned actions, which we'll talk about on this podcast. Um, but also taking in all of your other experiences as part of the collection of experiences and kind of like the training that you need to get to where you're gonna go. I graduated and spent 2 years in private equity, and then I went to a Series A fund. I knew I was always super interested in health and wellness, even starting in high school. I remember we could drop a class my senior year and create a side project. And I created a project that taught the principles of how to take care of yourself, how to advocate for yourself in the classroom, body image, self confidence, like routines that make you feel good and grounded. And I taught it to a group of middle school girls at the local Boys and Girls Club. Literally, like created a curriculum off of it. I absolutely loved it. Throughout high school, I didn't feel well. I struggled with anxiety, bloat, inflammation, brain fog, fatigue. So I was trying to learn like how do I be healthy? How do I make myself feel really good? A lot of that was about empowerment and like taking ownership over my health. But the entrepreneurial itch and the health and wellness itch definitely started in high school. And then in college, I studied a mix of biology and economics. I graduated, I went into private equity. I loved it. I worked with the most amazing group of people. I was actually the only woman on the investment team. There were 7 men, and I was the youngest by like 4 or 5 years. And it was such a great experience. They were just truly the best humans ever. I had such a business mind, an analytical business mind. I loved understanding, in the diligence process, like understanding what makes a business work, what different monetization strategies work, who the target audience is for the product, what, macroeconomic shifts or, how the political landscape affects how a business is going to perform or if there is opportunity for a company to scale. Like I loved that analytical thought process, but I also knew something was missing. I'm super passionate about women's health and also like the democratization of starting a company. Whenever you start a business, you are helping people in some way. Definitely in a health and wellness company, it's very obvious it's direct to consumer, but I needed more of that. So I wanted to invest, but blend the health and wellness angle to it. So I went to a Series A fund in New York, investing in female founded health and wellness companies, which definitely got me much closer. I also really admired all of the female founders I was working with. All of them were like expanders for me. I was like, I want to be you one day. And one of my best friends from college, Alex Manello, and we started creating business ideas like that whole, first year that I was in New York. We'd go to coffee shops and we'd chat. And there's some interesting little signs and parallels that we can share later in the episode. But like, I knew that I wanted to start my own company. I didn't know what it was gonna be yet. I didn't know how, but I knew it was in my path. And from, like, that moment that it was really solidified, probably my first year in New York, it wasn't until 4 years later that we, launched Shift. So, things take time to develop, but all of these experiences along the way were part of it. And then from the Series A fund that I was at, I knew I wanted to go even earlier. Like, the earlier stage VC you go, the more you are building and underwriting founder execution and working with founders and ideating with them rather than, more of the economic, analytical driven process of like later stage investing. So I went to a venture studio accelerator where I was the deal lead on all health and wellness startups. So I got to focus, it was a vertical agnostic fund, but I focused working exclusively with female founders and then everything in the health and wellness space. We were a venture studio, so literally building and investing in these truly, truly ideation stage companies. I remember I had an epiphany at that job. One day I was like, I want to make people healthy, not wealthy. And I realized that what I liked about VC was working with founders, was the ideation, was building, was, taking a hand, and obviously a much lesser extent than being a co-founder or an operator, but helping shape these ideas in these companies that honestly like transform people's lives. Like when someone builds a Peloton or an Aura ring, like you are literally changing the health, the lives, the happiness, the accessibility of human beings. And that just fired me up. And I was like, why am I investing? Like I want to be building, I want to be the one creating this change and really moving through that creative process. So it's so funny because, like, how I started in private equity, that's, I never thought I would start my career in PE. But if I didn't start in PE, investing in B2B SaaS companies with a group of men in Boston, I would have probably never started a business because that is what taught me how to build a company, what a strong business model looks like. And then from there, I kept inching earlier and earlier stage until I was literally building companies for my job. And then I was like, oh my God, I can build my own. And I left and I did. So I think that that's a really long-winded way of saying that everything connects and everything leads you down your path if you move through it with awareness. And I think that is what I would really love to ask you is like, you were at Peloton, you had an amazing job. You then left and started a business with a group of Peloton people. You were probably making a really good salary. You had health insurance. You had all of the things that felt safe and even maybe your life was exactly how you thought it should look. When there are things that are in our past, like you have known since you were a little girl that you wanted to start your own business, we often get nudges from the universe, these little like winks, these signs that, hey, yeah, life is comfortable, but there might be something more. And if we don't pay attention to them, we might miss the opportunity to go down these really aligned paths and create these beautiful lives that are really, what we dream of. What were some of those signals that pushed you to move out of comfort and into your dreams?
Yeah. I mean, I think everything is in your path, especially if you're willing to take a less traditional path. Like on my 30th birthday, I remember having the thought, and I was really lucky to feel this way. Like, I think it's funny because a year later on my 31st birthday, I felt the exact opposite way. But in that moment, I was like, I did all the things I wanted to do, and I'm exactly where I would have, like, my younger self would be so proud of me. I have the title, I have the salary, I have this job security. I've progressed in this career path that I set out to progress in. And now I'm leading product at a cool startup with really cool people. And, on the surface level, that made me really happy because I've always put so much of an emphasis on appearances and success. And especially like I was talking about the financial trauma that I went through with my family. When you go through something where you really have to start over and lose everything, building safety and security for yourself feels so good. Like knowing that I do not need to depend on someone else. I'm okay. I am safe. That feels really good. But I couldn't help but feel that nudge, like the nudge that you were talking about, where it was like, but I want more, I want more, I want more. And it wasn't, I want more money. It wasn't, I want more prestige. It was like, I have these things that light up my soul and I want to do more of them. And my first reaction to myself was actually like, no, you should be grateful. Like, you should be grateful that you are where you are. You shouldn't want more than this. And also, doing more than this is really risky and scary. And we're going to sacrifice all of this support and structure and safety that we've built. And not to go totally off on a tangent, but I had to do a lot of like healing work on that financial wound to even be willing to consider taking a career risk. And I think I don't want to like um diminish that because for a lot of people, especially if you have a family or people who depend on you, like sometimes it's just not the right time in your life to take a career risk, or sometimes you have to get things in order before you can take a career risk. For me, it was like, I don't have kids, I don't have expenses, I don't have like, I have the ability right now to maybe take a career risk. But for me, it was like I had to fix the confidence inside of me that would like let me even even do that, even consider that. And As I started to think about like what would that look like for me, I listened to a Mel Robbins podcast with Oprah's life coach, and she gave this advice that legitimately, I remember like that morning I went out for my walk and I was thinking, I just wanna, like I don't know what to do. I, like, wanna sign I wanna feel like I went to this podcast specifically to get advice on this topic, and it was exactly what I needed to hear at the time, and what she talked about was finding the things that make you light up creatively, that make you passionate, that make you excited, and leaning more into those and move away from the things that make you feel stuck. So the first step is that awareness of, like, where do I feel really good and lit up, and where do I feel stuck? And so for me, I started being like, okay, I feel kind of stuck, focused on maybe some of this part of my career, this part of the business. I don't like this element of it. But when I'm in a community of women or when I'm learning about something to do with my health or when I'm healing or whatever, that makes me feel really good. And she said, you don't need to know how to monetize it yet. You don't have to see what your job title would be, what the career looked like. It's just starting with that awareness and starting to move more and more into that, into what makes you feel alive and less in what makes you feel stuck. And doing that creates a bunch of small steps that will eventually take you where you need to go. And I was like, okay, that's scary because this is at 20 years old, I was like, I'm going to go work in tech with this title because I see a clear linear path to being financially independent, being able to help my family out and not being in debt. And I was like, great, that's what I'm going to do. So it is, I can't express how like not in my nature it is to take a step without knowing where it's going to go a month from now, a year from now, 10 years from now. I'm like the biggest future, um, like planner and obsessor and controller. So that advice was hard to take, but it was like the first nudge that I needed to start getting on that path. And as I intentionally started taking those steps, the next step would just reveal itself in the most perfect way. Like the things that I was having to force to work were so wrong for me. Like whether it was a job idea or a person to work with or a job in general or like anything. And the things that just kind of like fell into my lap and that were kind of almost like little signs or nudges, those ended up being all of the right things that I needed to do or take the next step to get me to a place where I felt like more clarity, more alignment, like just, okay, I actually can see this going somewhere.
I think that that's such an important point because we are not supposed to see the entire path. And if we can see the entire path, the path that we see is likely rooted in fear and ego and clinging and looking for a sense of safety by having something totally mapped out and defined. And that probably is not the best life for us. It's even similar to, maybe subconsciously settling in a relationship. It's like, oh, I can see the house, I can see the kids, I can see marriage by this age. Well, is that really rooted in fear of the unknown, or is that true alignment and it's right for you? And if you're brave enough to say, I know starting a business is in my path, or I know this type of career is in my path, it feels really big. Well, you wouldn't be feeling so lit up and excited by it if it wasn't for you. And the most amazing part of life is that all of the steps in between are a surprise to us. But that end outcome, which is your core innate desire, is in your path. The timing is up to the universe. The way that you get there is definitely up to the universe, but the universe is always in communication with us. And exactly as you said, you're always getting these little nudges of, okay, I'm going to try this. Like, okay, you knew you're going to start a company. You tried it with a few co-founders for whatever reason, there didn't work out. You tried more of a tech platform. And at the time, I think this is really interesting to dive into too, is you really thought you were going to build a VC backed tech driven company that didn't end up going in the direction, and at the time, you're like, "But why?" Like, of course, like, I can't come from the tech world. I know I wanna start a company, combine the 2, and this is exactly what I should be building. You didn't have the level of awareness yet that maybe the company that you're gonna end up building is, like, one deviation off of it. You had to go through that experience to feel out and confirm internally that that particular path is not meant for you. And I think sometimes when we're so focused on just getting to the end outcome and, like, feeling, like, safe, like, "Oh, we arrived. Thank God we can see it now." We actually miss all of those intuitive steps that bring us so much more like depth and understanding and also guide us in the direction that we need to get to the end outcome. And I don't know, everyone says it's like about the journey, it's not about the end outcome, but that is really where all of the learning happens.
100%. I was so focused on having the end outcome that I completely didn't care how I felt in the moment until it honestly started making me sick, and it became unbearable. Like the level of anxiety I had, the level of insomnia I had, how bad my stomach felt every day. Just like I was feeling so bad. I didn't realize the two were linked at the time, but for a while I could push through, and I know you could too, so much discomfort because I felt like I was on the right path. And the biggest shift for me in the last year has also been the future that I see so clearly in my head is completely made up. It's not real. The only thing that is real is right now. And if I hate right now and I hate this moment and the moment that's next and the moment that's next in service of some master plan where I'm super happy, that is not real. That is not a life. That's not a life. And so that really, realizing that like the present like the future is made up of a ton of present moments, and if I don't like the present moments, then I'm not going to like my life. And that became a more scary reality than taking a step back, a step down, maybe living in my mom's house for a few months, maybe, not being able to go on any trips or eating out or whatever it is, uh, having to get some judgmental looks from relatives or old colleagues when I explain what I'm doing or that I don't have a title right now. Like that, those things would have terrified me before. The possibility of facing, a step down, a step backwards, a step to the side. That used to scare me more. Now what scares me more is kind of like this guaranteed unhappiness. I would rather take the risk and like I could be happy.
What you said about the future is made up of a bunch of tiny present moments is so true. And I think so often we hold our breath or we will be happy when we get the job, we earn this amount of money, we finally are able to move out of New York and buy a house in the suburbs, or, I'm 65 and can retire and can then relax and spend time with my family. If we are always holding our breath or putting off happiness or postponing and delaying our life until a specific moment or a specific outcome, we have not lived our life. And
Yes.
truly all that is guaranteed is this exact present moment. I think that it's really important because society has made us feel like to be safe in this world, to be worthy. I know for me, I definitely associated so much of my self worth with being in these prestigious jobs, having these prestigious titles, getting promoted, and having like a really quote unquote good life and career planned out for me. But that good life and that external safety did not correlate to internal peace. I was like chronically unhappy. I was anxious. Something was unsettling. I remember I'd come home from work and just want to lie in bed and like go on TikTok or zone out. And it was this feeling of, yeah, it looks good on paper. Yeah, my LinkedIn looks good. But there wasn't a sense of internal happiness and peace. And I think it also looks different for everyone. Like there's a lot of people who want to go and make a solid paycheck and have health insurance and work-life balance and then live an incredible life on the weekends and at night, and, like, that is fulfilling, and that is a life well lived for a lot of people. Other people wanna create something, they wanna own something, they want to have a career that lights them up every day, and I think that what is important is not, like, you should be in this camp or you should be in that camp, but being able to get honest enough with yourself in taking out all the background noise, all the judgment, all the fear of how am I gonna pull this off? How could this ever possibly work for me? And just getting radically honest with yourself about what makes you want to get out of bed every day and live your life.
Yes. The question that I asked myself that I think everyone should stop and ask themselves every now and then is, if I didn't have to explain it to anyone, if I didn't have to post it on LinkedIn, if no one knew but me, what would I be doing right now? Like if I didn't have to worry, because I mean, maybe this isn't a question that would resonate with everyone because not everyone is living their life from like this ego perspective, but I certainly was. And so much of what I was doing was because I thought it was what I should be doing, what looked good, and I thought that if I was doing what I was should be doing, and if I was doing what looked good, and I was doing what was impressive, then I would be happy. And after doing that for so long and still being miserable, I was like, "Okay, miserable is an exaggeration, but I was not happy." I was like, "There has to be a better way." And when I removed all of the external judgments and praise from my equation, the answer was extremely different in what I wanted. And I was like, "Oh, we might actually want to pay attention to that one." Because another piece of advice that's sort of like the classic is there is the thing that you are doing, like, there is someone out there who will love that job and be incredible at that job, and that person is gonna be successful in doing what they're doing. And so it's like, if you are how can I phrase this? Basically, it's like doing the thing that you love the most and you're best at, you are more likely to have success than doing the thing that you don't love and you're not the best at because you think it's the right thing to do. And that's sort of what I realized about the tech thing. I was like, if I there are people who this is they love this. Like, this is they eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. They This is their passion, this is their life work, this is their goal. And I'm not saying competing in the sense that it's like me versus them, but it's like to go and try to be the best in that arena or be really successful in that arena. I'm going to be essentially competing with people who that is their dream. And so I would rather maybe go and do the thing that's my dream and what I love doing. And I think not only will I probably be happier, but I'll probably be more successful because instead of having to brute force my way through life, I'm going to wake up and, want to do those things. And that doesn't mean that every day is great or you're never doing work that you don't want to do. And I think what you said about how it doesn't have to be starting a company at all. Like, whatever it is, some people have, I know people who are like so passionate about being a therapist or working with the environment or even staying at home, like whatever it is that makes you feel really good. If you're doing it from that place and not from the place of what you think you should be doing, I think not only will you be happier, but you'll actually be more successful, even if it's not as obvious to you yet.
Without a doubt. I feel like sometimes when we force ourselves into things that we think we should be doing or that feel safe, those things also don't totally align with our deepest skill sets. And sometimes our deepest skill sets might be like creativity or networking or, really high level strategy or like being a visionary, like leaning into things like honestly, if you have no idea what you're best at, look into like your human design, look into some of the astrology stuff, take some of the personality tests. You can find really interesting information about yourself and how you operate best in the environments that you operate best. And I think sometimes when we force ourselves, like I remember in college, everybody went into investment banking or consulting pretty much out of school. And it was like if you weren't, a lawyer or pre-med, and it's those are the two career paths. And it's like I am taking myself and trying to conform myself to the skill sets that are good in that type of job. And I'm dyslexic. Like I can't spell. I really struggle with having to work really quickly and be in Excel models and like not flip a number. And sometimes I was like, I can think and I understand this stuff so clearly, but the execution isn't always there. And sometimes when you start understanding yourself deeply, both in terms of what we've been talking about, which is what lights you up, like what makes you want to get out of bed, what makes you feel creative, what makes you feel like I don't want to wait and hold my breath for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I want to like pause this Tuesday and stay in this Tuesday for as long as I can. It's collecting that information and then collecting like how do you work? Like what feels good to you? Marissa and I are really into our human designs. We are definitely different. Like Marissa will take a nap midday. I like really lean into a 2-hour morning routine where I'm like phone off, meditating, journaling, thinking, doing deep work. And it's what environments are also conducive to the way that you operate without shame, without feeling like you need to conform to like being in the office 5 days a week, sitting and grinding from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Like, if that is not innately who you are, or even like you're not in the right culture, it kind of stunts your abilities and your skill sets. And I think that when we stay in opportunities, whether that be relationship or career or cities or environments or friendships that aren't right for us, and we ignore the signals that something better might be for us or that we need to pull away from these things, we end up second guessing ourselves. I remember being in some jobs where I'm like, I'm so stupid because I can't spell and I still keep making these like stupid mistakes on a model. And it's like, whoa, you're actually dyslexic and you're just not really in the right environment for this. And then, starting a company clearly was both in Marissa and I's path. And it is so creative. I'm like, oh my God, that is the way my brain works. So I think it's also about finding alignment in your purpose, your passion, your interest, and also alignment in like how you really want to live a typical day because we are all deserving to like feel good on a daily basis.
Absolutely. The other thing that you can look at is what you did as a kid. So
Yes.
before you were corrupted by pick one of these 4 career paths, or you can only be successful in life if it looks like this. What did you do? And so, like, we just talked about, we loved, like, creating businesses and doing that stuff. I loved, like, yeah, I loved that stuff. And one of my good friends in New York, when he was growing up, he would make music videos. He was extremely creative. In his spare time, he's always done the most incredible projects. I'm just like blown away by his creative mind and ability. And he spent his whole career like in tech and has been really successful, but he just decided to start like a more creative venture. And watching him come alive and how much he's progressing in that and like how well it's going, I'm just like, wow, this is what happens when someone matches up their day, their life, their path with their innate gifts and interests. It's like so cool to see. And I think similarly, you were just saying about like your city and your environment. Like you decided to move away from New York when it wasn't serving you anymore. I know that's really hard. I think a lot of people live in certain cities because also that feels like what they've defined as success, and moving maybe somewhere else or home or wherever it might be feels like a similar step back. And we talked to Brittany recently. When she moved back to Atlanta, her whole life opened up. You've had your health. Wait, actually tell the story about your health and what happened when you moved back to Boston.
Oh my God. Yeah. I was deciding whether to stay. I knew I wanted to start a company. I was at the accelerator incubator in New York, hitting my 2 year, just over 2 year mark there. I really knew I wanted to start a company. I could do it in New York. I could do it in Boston. My family's from Boston. Um, New York is great. I love it. I miss it. I wish I could spend more time there, but it wasn't. I was getting anxious, the sirens, the jackhammers, the air pollution. It was just so much stimulation. I knew intuitively I needed a little bit more calm, a little bit more nature, but I wanted to ignore that nudge. So I was like justifying. I remember my boyfriend and I at the time were looking at apartments in Dumbo, and we were walking around the neighborhood and kept saying, he was also from Boston, "Oh my gosh, this is so much like Beacon Hill. Oh my gosh, this is so much like Boston." And in the back of my mind, I'm like, "Why don't I just move to Boston?" And it was I didn't wanna let myself. And I started getting these histamine rashes. I was in the office, and every day around 2 p.m., my body would light up in hives, like burning, inflammation, all my whole body, head to toe, bright red, raised skin, burning hives, tingling on my face. It was crazy. And I went to my dermatologist, went to my primary care doctor. They're like, this is psychosomatic. It's not an allergy. The day that I moved back to Boston, I did not get another histamine rash again. And I think that that experience is true in a lot of areas of our life is we get whispers that something is not for us or there is something more or this might not be our path. And we can ignore them all we want, but that whisper will turn into a scream. Like,
Literally.
in New York, I was like, "I'm gonna stay, I'm gonna make it work, I'm gonna move to Brooklyn." Oh my God, it's so Cobble Hill is the equivalent of Beacon Hill. This is perfect. Just be honest with yourself and move to Boston, you know? I'm ignoring, ignoring, ignoring. So my body quite literally started screaming in fluorescent hives to the point, which is interesting, I had to leave the office. Like, I would go out for like a 45-minute walk at 2 p.m. every day as I'm in these hives, and that is also symbolic of it is time to go. And I wasn't listening. And as soon as I went, I was able to stay. The hives stopped. And I think that that is one really obvious example of a whisper turning into a scream. But life moves so much easier when we just move with the current. I always think too, there's this book, it's an amazing book called Your Soul's Plan. And it talks about how you have a set of experiences in your life. You're supposed to go to all these different cities, have these different experiences, live these different lives. And it's almost like we're just flowing downstream in this beautiful, effortless river, which is our life. And sometimes we hang around one turn for a little longer. Sometimes we move really quickly. Sometimes we meet someone along the way. We swim with someone for a while, and then that person takes off. And like that is the flow of our life. And it is beautiful, it is effortless. But when we constantly try to swim upstream and like stay in the job too long, stay in the relationship too long, ignore the whispers and start band-aiding all the screams with prescription drugs or sleeping medication or getting high or scrolling, like we can just take a second and zoom out and envision us flowing down a river and say, just let go. Just like start flowing and you'll arrive at all of the right places.
The whisper to a scream thing, I think I lived my life for so long where something had to not only be screaming, but like hitting me over the head with a bat for me to acknowledge it because I had such my mind was running the show where I was like, I've decided this is what's right for me and I'm going to make this right for me. Like, I'm not accepting other opinions. And what I've started to learn to listen to is I think our body gives us very powerful no's. I think the yeses are more quiet. I think when something is wrong for you, it becomes extremely uncomfortable, whether that means, you're literally having like you're having histamine rashes. For me, it often looked like insomnia, where at night I was just having this ruminating of like, oh my God, this isn't right. This isn't right. This isn't right. And yeah, we distract ourselves, we numb ourselves, we do anything to avoid sitting with that. And then but it's harder because I think sometimes it's like, okay, I know this is maybe wrong for me, but what am I supposed to do then? And sometimes it's like really, really awful and scary to sit with realizing something's wrong for you. Like if you are married with kids and you realizing like that your husband is wrong for you and you're really unhappy, that might just be something that like is you feel like you can't even accept that because you're not in a position to leave, you're not in a position to go. Or if you are miserable in a certain situation and you are like completely reliant on that situation, like I'm not saying it's always easy to listen to this or sit with this and then make a decision. But for me, where I started, and again, like I don't have I don't have kids or a lot of responsibilities. So this is and it was still so hard for me. But I was started to listen to what if I just think that this might not be right for a second? Like what if this job isn't right? What if this relationship isn't right? What if this apartment or friendship or whatever it is in my life wasn't right? What if I acknowledge that and then for me, what became the right thing to do, even if it didn't make sense to my brain, it just felt like peace in my body. So I think hearing that peace is so much quieter than the like discomfort of being in the wrong thing. But sometimes the right decision was just like, okay, like that, I will feel better if if I take that next step, even though it doesn't logically make sense to me. But I do think so much of our discomfort in this life is because we are stuck and we're committed to the path that we're on. And even the thought that it might not be right or that we might need to change something is almost just as scary as being, in the thing that's making you miserable.
Explain what you just said was so powerful that yeses are harder to hear.
Yeah.
How have you, and maybe it's 11:11, that means this is a powerful question. So give an example of when in your life you have had a nudge towards a yes, but you haven't seen the whole plan yet. There's uncertainty, there's moving parts. There's a lot that you'd have to figure out between that intuitive nudge of a yes and actually moving into the yes. And I think that the overwhelm of it can be quickly can be a quick way to just dismiss the whole thing. What
Yeah.
is an example of feeling a yes, feeling it in your body, not ignoring, but not worrying about the a million steps to actually move into the yes and starting to take aligned action on the yes?
Yeah, I'll give you a quiet yes plus a then universe confirmation that
Yes,
you should
love.
take it that way. And by the way, I think for people who don't like believe in these signs, obviously we believe in them 100%, but I think just allowing yourself to think that that is maybe a sign is the most like heartwarming, healing thing ever. So I'll talk about the quiet yes and the sign I got. So you know this. I am moving out of my apartment. Moved into this apartment 4 years ago. It was the first apartment I've ever had by myself. My name's on the lease. I furnished it myself. No one else lives here. I moved here after a long-term relationship ended when I was 27. And if you wanna talk about, like, trauma being triggered from growing up, like, when we lost our house and all my stuff was in storage and I didn't have anything when I was 20, my biggest fear ever was feeling like I didn't have a place, like I didn't have a home. And so when I ended that relationship and I needed to move out of that place that we were living, I was a mess. I was weeping. Like it was so hard for me to feel that like lack of control over where I lived. And so when I signed this lease that was all mine, I decorated it all mine. I felt so safe knowing that no one could ever take this away from me. And what I didn't realize at the time is that I hadn't really healed, just had created a set of circumstances that made me feel safe. Like this is my apartment, all the stuff is mine. I'm okay. And as we've been starting this business and my rent has literally almost doubled since I moved in and a lot of circumstances have changed, it doesn't really make sense for me to stay here right now. And I also have a lot of uncertainty in what's next. So it also doesn't make sense for me to sign my next lease. And I've been grappling with, do I put my stuff in storage and kind of figure it out? Or do I stay in this apartment, use my savings, keep myself steady and comfortable? And I was getting a lot of no's. Like a lot of things felt stressful or wrong. And I didn't really know what the right decision was. And as I sat with, you know, giving up this apartment, I realized that even the stress of holding on to this apartment was not right. I was holding on to something that I didn't need to hold on to anymore. I don't need this apartment to be safe and secure and know I'm going to be okay anymore. And so when I thought about letting this apartment go with love and meeting my next chapter with openness, I just felt a little bit of peace. And I was kind of like, I want to sign that this is the right thing to do because I have to make this decision. I have to tell my building, my landlord. And I was I was just like, I think this is the right decision, and I just would love like a little confirmation. And I don't like to ask people for their opinions too much because it clouds me from hearing what I need to hear inside. So I wanted to try to make this decision without getting too much advice. And when I moved into this apartment, the first thing that anyone gave me for this apartment was my one of my best friends brought over a lucky bamboo plant and it was in water and it was so pretty and it was very small. And I've had that lucky bamboo plant for the entire time I've lived here, which is about 4 years. And right after I was asking for that universe confirmation, this plant, which has grown so tall and so strong, literally started, I'm looking at it right now, like started turning yellow and brown. And I took a photo of it and I asked ChatGPT, I was like, what's going on with my plant? And it was like, "It's dying." And I was like, "What do you mean it's dying? I've taken perfect care of it the whole time." And the lifetime cycle of these plants is because they're in water, like, if you plant it in soil, it's a totally different thing. But in a vase in water, they typically live 1 to 2 years. And mine had lived the entire time that I lived here. And when I realized that my plant that had been here since the day I moved in was, like, starting to die right as I'm deciding to leave this place, I like got full chills. I was just like, "Oh my god, I know this is the right decision to give this place up. I can let it go with love and appreciation and realize this meant so much to me. It did exactly what it needed to do in my life. It gave me this foundation to feel so safe in that part of my life that I could actually do some of the work and healing in other parts of my life so that I could pursue other careers so that I could I grew so much in this apartment and that is beautiful and I will always thank it for that, but it just was a sign that it's not part of my next chapter and I can let it go and have like real peace in that.
The metaphors in that are everywhere. I mean, the plant grew as you grew. The plant started smaller and grew taller and wiser and took up more space. And when it was time to go, it was time to go in peace and happiness and having, taken everything that you could have from the space and the experience. And it's such a beautiful thing. And signs are so beautiful because I think signs are one of the best ways that we can converse with the universe. And asking for signs is really easy and it's simple, and we usually always receive an answer. And I think that we can sit and ask for signs just intuitively. Like sometimes if you sit in a meditation, and you ask, yes or no, is this right for me? It's usually that first thing that you hear that our brain wants to override really quickly with analytics and logic or intellectualizing our decision. But if that first thing that you hear is often your higher self speaking to you and the universe giving you a bit of guidance, but we can also ask for signs in other ways, similar to what you did with the plant. But I'd love if you could share kind of like the basic principles of asking for a sign, and then maybe we can
Yeah,
each
I
share what
want
we know.
yeah, and I want you to also, because I feel like you were doing this even before I was, but when I ask for a sign, I do it 2 ways. Sometimes I'm asking to see something really specific, and, like, I have so many crazy examples of one time I asked to see the, like, bougainvillea plant, that beautiful pink plant that grows all over California, and it was winter in New York, and I was like, "That's gonna be pretty hard to see," and I asked to see a sign if I was on the right path in this certain direction, and my mom had mailed me a bunch of photos from my childhood, and I opened them. There was a photo of me holding, like, a bushel of bougainvillea, and I was like just, like it was right in that kind of moment that I needed to see it, and it just felt like such confirmation. And then other times, I'll say something like, "I feel lost or stuck and I need guidance," and I'm not asking for anything specific, and that was more like the plant situation where I interpreted that realization that it was dying on schedule with me moving out as a sign, and so sometimes I like to ask to see something specific, and then also being okay if I don't see it, that maybe that's, an answer as well, and sometimes I just let, the universe, whatever is out there, know that I need guidance and my eyes and ears are open and I'm looking for it. Um, like, I feel like you and we're texting constantly about our signs.
Are literally, like, as you just said that, I'm opening my notes of 100 signs trying to figure out which one. I mean, crazy. Signs are so, so beautiful because you almost always receive them.
Yes.
Oh my god, the signs are the best. I mean, yeah, to share a few, so I guess one of them is that I went through a pretty big breakup this summer. Left VC officially in September to start a business, which at the time, Marissa and I were not working together. I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like, what shape it was going to take, but I was like, I know this has been in my path. I really want to do this. I want to jump and see where it goes. And I asked to see a sea turtle, which is random. It was like, also don't overthink your signs. Whatever pops into your mind, that's your sign. And I asked to see it, within a few days. I forgot about it. I think it was the following night or the next day. I was lying in bed and I was like, "Oh, I really should do work, and I just do not want to. I wanna zone out and I wanna go on Instagram." I was like, "Whatever, I'm gonna go on Instagram." I open Instagram and the very first video that I see is Elizabeth Gilbert being interviewed, and she is explaining, um, how life is so precious and to be present in every moment and, like, let life take you where it's meant to take you. You're on an incredible journey, just release the stress and the pressure to have it all figured out and just live, like flow and live and be embodied. And she's explaining, and I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what I needed to hear. And she gets to the very end of the video. It's like a 3 or 4 minute video. And she's like, and I want to explain this to make it a little bit more concrete in the context of a sea turtle. It was crazy. I was like, that literally was a message for me. I mean, so many signs, so many signs. I've been seeing numbers a lot lately. Another interesting one is I have had this is Marissa and I have talked a lot about the year of the snake, which is a big year of shedding, 2025, entering into the year of the horse, which I think is this week or next week. We're in
Next
mid-February
week,
right now.
they
Next
cannot come soon enough.
cannot come soon enough. And in the year of the snake, both of us had a lot of shedding. For me personally, I left VC. I moved back to Boston. I left New York City. I went through a breakup of a very long-term relationship. I had to shed a lot of things that I didn't want to let go of. And interestingly, one thing that I've really worked hard to get back is my cycle. I've had a 28-day cycle now for 3 years on the dot, like so, so regular. And this is coming from 12 years of not ovulating and not getting a period. But what I did notice is that I was almost obsessed with how good my cycle had gotten. Like it was so perfect, so regular. And I'm like, oh my God, amazing. This is something that's now in the bucket of like taken care of. And I've perfected it and I've mastered it. And I didn't realize that I was thinking I kind of was, putting my perfectionist tendencies onto my cycle and feeling safe because it was so regular. So in my last cycle of the year of the snake, which is interesting, my cycle was delayed. And it was day 33, no period, day 34, no period. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on? And I had realized that that was a test. Oftentimes, and we can talk about this now or in a later episode, but oftentimes as we're moving closer and closer to the things that are meant for us in life, we get tested. We're like, that a job pops up that is almost so perfect, but something is not quite a fit. Or you meet a guy or whoever that is so close to the perfect relationship, but it's just a decimal of a place off. And it would be so easy for us to say, let's just lock this in. Like, we're good. Like, this is the job. This is the relationship. We're good. But if we pass the test, then we will really connect with universe will present, the full package, exactly what we're looking for. And it will click in with so much ease. And I realized that I had a little bit of a test with my period of it was kind of another element of control for me is I was obsessed with how perfect it had become. And I wasn't truly just trusting my body that it is safe, it is healthy, it can fluctuate and I can let it fluctuate and it will revert to normal and homeostasis when I take care of it and nurture it and listen to it. I was almost looking at it like a math problem. So one of my final tests was to trust your body. It knows what it's doing. It's going to take care of you. And I had a later cycle that month. And what was really interesting is I got my period day 35, which was almost a full week late, absolutely painless, the easiest period I've ever had. And it started on the night of the last full moon of the snake year. A major sign for me of just trust yourself. Trust yourself.
I do think that a lot of the tests have to do with things that we're holding on to for the wrong reasons. Like for me, that was really the thing with my apartment is like, why am I holding on to this? And it was because it's an outsourced sign of faith or of safety. And I am not trying to say to anyone listening to this that wanting to keep your home or your apartment is like in any way, shut it all, shut it all, get rid of it. No, for me specifically in this circumstance, it didn't make sense to keep this lease. And what was making me feel like I should keep it were the old stories in my head around like, you will not be safe unless you have this, this, and this. And so for me to be able to let go of something that, and for you, like your health, like if you don't have this cycle, like, are you still healthy? Are you okay? Do you have to go back and intervene and freak out about your health again? Like for me, the scariest thing to me is like, going back to a place where I don't have a place to live or feeling, unstable. And so if we can meet those things with, like it's almost like the final frontier is being able to meet those things and not have them trigger you, have them hurt
Yes.
you like the way they used to.
100%. I also really quickly explain the thorn analogy because that ties in here, and I think that's a really important illustration.
Yeah. I mean, both of us love this book. One of the books that really changed my life was The Untethered Soul. And I will admit, if anyone hasn't read it and wants to pick it up, it's a little hard to get into. It's a little dense, but once I got into it, I mean, it just changed so much for me in the way that I view life, myself, my thoughts. Also, one of the first books that made me realize that all of the things that I were in my head weren't real and all of the future stuff wasn't real. So it was just like, it really changed my perspective. But one of the things it talks about are these concepts of a thorn. When we get hurt or something bad happens to us, we get essentially like you can think of the metaphor of having a thorn sticking out of your arm. And our two options essentially of how we can go about our lives is the first one is we can build protective padding, because at first when you have this thorn in your arm, you bump into someone and it gets jabbed further and it really hurts and you react to that. And then over time, maybe you start building protective layering around it. You build a bubble around it. You start asking people, hey, be really careful. I have this thorn here. And you essentially are orienting your life in such a way that your whole life is trying to not trigger or bump or hurt that thorn and not cause additional pain. And you're doing, you're putting a lot of effort into that. And you're also asking other people to put effort into that. And the alternative presented in the book is that you remove the thorn. You heal that. You take ownership of that and move through that. And the way we talk about this a lot is, you know, I, for me, a really, really big good example of this is abandonment issues. I feel like I have full rights to have abandonment issues. My brother committed suicide when I was almost 13. My dad kind of left for a while, lost my house, as I said. I have these things where I was able to say, I have abandonment issues. And I was spending all of my energy making sure I didn't get abandoned again. I was making sure I have the apartment. I was making sure I had the most stable relationship. I was trying to make sure that I chose people who wouldn't leave me. I would tell people I have abandonment issues. So please don't hurt me, like as if that is good or healthy to be doing. Um, what I've realized through that analogy of the thorn is like, I can either live my whole life trying to not activate that wound, or I can try to heal it. Obviously, easier said than done, a lot of work, ongoing work. But that's where the whole concept of not self abandoning comes from. I'm realizing I am the only person who can remove that thorn. I am the only person who can heal that. And the alternative is that I have to go through the rest of my life with this thorn sticking out of my arm that's constantly getting knocked up against. And so that was like the untethered soul concept that I apply to whether it's my abandonment issues or needing a certain thing to feel safe, or whether it's like a personality trait. I think I now I'm like, how can I remove that thorn from my side instead of from my arm, instead of having it get triggered constantly and unexpectedly and living my life in hypervigilance.
100%. And I think like on a later episode, we're definitely going to dive into like association with attachment styles or association with these different definitions that we put on ourselves, whether it's anxious or depressed or sick, and how we can free ourselves of all of those narratives and kind of remove the thorn rather than keep trying to build a case that gets bigger and bigger and bigger around it. But I think in the context of this situation, removing the thorn also opens us up. It opens us up to live more freely, to feel more fearless, to feel that we don't need to live in this perfectly contained and controlled environment to be safe. And that might bring in an awareness of, oh, this career path could interest me, or maybe I want to take this risk, or move to this city, or try this, or pick up a side hustle, or put myself out there and like do a free internship to learn about something that I never really thought would interest me. It's almost like when we remove some of that casing and feel more free, we feel lighter, we're more open, we're more receptive, and it allows us to flow with life more and move in directions that align with us so deeply that maybe we would have never thought are even like safe to approach when we're so hyper vigilant and preoccupied and focused on just keeping ourselves safe.
It is It is so time consuming and tiring to be constantly braced and keeping ourselves safe. And I've lived the majority of my life that way. And it showed up in my body. I know you too. Like it's like shows up as physical symptoms, it shows up as emotional symptoms. And it's the hardest work. It's the scariest work, the most freeing work that there is.
It is. It really is. And I think like the thing to come back to is that we are all that we have. The job is not going to keep us safe. The relationship's not going to keep us safe. Everybody else around us trying to mitigate our discomfort and not say the wrong thing to trigger us or, always put ourselves in environments that, you know, feel safe. One, those that's a false sense of control and safety. The only safety that we have is within ourselves. And when we try and live in a way that, you know, mitigates all risk, uncertainty, or discomfort, one, that is totally an illusion. That is not the truth. But secondly, we miss our opportunity to live these expanded, incredible, vibrant, high definition lives. Um, but we say all of this, not saying that we're perfect, and it's a journey and it's constant work, but the payoff is so rewarding. I know that we're gonna have to wrap this, and part two on all of this will be coming next. But I'd love, Marissa, maybe each of us can share one or two ways that we practice this daily in our lives, like to make it a little bit more tangible.
Yeah, because I do think that's so hard, right? Like we're saying to do all this work, whatever. And again, I don't want to underestimate how hard, scary, or impossible that can sound to a lot of people. I'm thinking about if someone had told me to go, you need the right environment, the right situation to sometimes revisit some of the things that you need to heal. And that can be really hard and scary, but it doesn't have to be that you go and heal everything and unearth everything from your past. It can be as simple as in the moment, starting to listen to what you need and giving yourself that. So for me, I didn't have to go relive my brother's suicide to heal my abandonment wounds. I was able to the thing that I wanted to get from a partner or a friend or a job, my mindset started to shift to how can I hear that need? Like, where is that need coming from inside my body? What is it that I'm looking for? And how can I start giving it to myself? How can I start making myself the love that I was pouring out to everyone else? How can I give some of that back? And that is the practice of self love. It's in those moments when you are feeling that need and you want to reach for someone else to give you validation or comfort or promise something, giving it to yourself instead. And over time, that becomes your instinct. And as you give yourself what you need, you start feeling safe and you don't feel like I need everything else to feel safe because you're like, I've got this. Like I can give myself what I need.
100%. And it's trusting yourself. Like, I think one thing that you and I definitely both try to practice, and this used to be my downfall, is if there was something going on in my life, I would ask, like, I'd have like 13 people on speed dial and I would get all of their opinions. And my decision ended up being, or the action that I took was probably so far off from what I would do truly on my own, because it was like a blend of 13 other people's experiences and, views on what was happening to me. And I think it's really hard, but it's like, if something happens, give yourself 20 minutes to just sit and like write down how you feel. Write down what you think you should do. Ask your higher self, like, what is the best course for me? What is the best decision? Write down what you hear without overriding it. And then if you want to ask a few people, pick a few that you really trust. Also that ask you more questions than tell you what to do. Because I think, in getting advice from other people, the most helpful thing that someone else can do for you is ask you questions that makes you think deeper and access the deeper, more honest answer on your own. But that can be a really good way to do it. And I also think doing things, as you said, like taking care of yourself first, giving yourself that love, do things that you love every day. Everything doesn't need to be so hard. Like Marissa the other day, not to share your experiences, but you won't get mad. We obviously, one of our content pillars is Substack. She wrote it from the bath. The most beautiful Substack I've ever read, from the bath with bubbles and probably a candle and a nice drink. It's like, give yourself what you need and you are going to transform. And more than anything, more than the external productivity and, the progress that you make on the outside, which will come, of course, and you will connect with all of your manifestations and the things that you want deepest in life. But I think that the biggest reward from this work is the sense of safety, calm, and peace that you feel internally.
Amen. And that's like, sorry, last thing, but
Yeah, we could go forever.
I don't know if I should share this because you're not supposed to share your wishes, but from the age, I think I was probably like 8 or 9, my wish on my birthday candles every year was just to be happy. And that might sound really depressing, but my logic behind it was if I'm like, isn't the point of any wish I would have to make me happy? So if I wish for happiness, then it's all the wishes bundled up together. So I was like, I could wish for money. I could wish for more friends. I could wish to be prettier. I could wish for him to like me back. But if I'm happy, will I care? And as I've gotten older, that has been like one of the more profound realizations that chasing happiness and finding happiness is the goal. And so if you're doing all of these things and they're not making you happy, then what is the point? Like focusing on the happiness and the peace and what makes you feel good, that matters more than whatever your mind is telling you to focus on.
That is a really, really powerful point. The other and the last thing to follow up on that is, I think that we also think things are gonna make us happy. We think this job, this income, being validated by this person, being accepted into this friend group, this guy wanting me back is gonna make me happy. That's ego talking. We actually don't know. And like sometimes being rejected by a guy or not getting the job that we thought would make us happy is part of the path to extreme happiness, because
Yes.
those things did not, you know, authentically and intuitively align with us. And sometimes we need the shedding of things that we think would make us feel so good. And yes, they would definitely satisfy the ego and make us feel worthy because, we're likely outsourcing our sense of worthiness to being validated by external things. But when we move that sense of worthiness internally and we let with ease and peace and love and gratitude the things that are not meant to stay go, we are just expediting that connection to the true sources of happiness in our lives. It's always first rooted within us.
And it's a trust muscle. Something I do sometimes is I go back and write down things that I really wanted and didn't get. And I've genuinely never, with enough time, not been happy about it. You know what I mean? Like, when I think about the things that I wanted more than anything 5 years ago and the ones that I didn't get, thank God, like with enough time, it's always so. And so if you kind of train yourself to believe that, because it is true, and you look back and give yourself that evidence, it helps you in the moment that you aren't getting something, be like, I may not know why yet, but it's, we're going to be thankful one day that this didn't work out.
Yes. And the reverse is true too. Everything that happened in your life that you're like, I wish that didn't happen. That job sucked. That relationship had no point to it. That was a huge inconvenience. That was also part of your plan. But the payoff is just after.
Yes, yes.
Amazing. Well,
Amen.
this was a fun one. Thank you. Thank you all for listening. And we will see you guys next Tuesday.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. If something in today's conversation resonated with you, take a moment to pause and notice where it's sitting within you.
Living in alignment is not about fixing yourself or becoming someone new. It's about listening, trusting, and slowly coming home to who you already are.
Thank you for spending this time with us and for being part of this community.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might resonate with it too. See you next time.